Welcome to the Three Championship Drive podcast on YouTube, hosted by me, Lance Caporossi. Follow me on X at Lance Caporossi, the same way you see it spelled on the screen. Do us a favor, hit the subscribe button, like the video, but more importantly, tell a Pistons fan. So, Cade Cunningham, we're just going to get right into it. Cade Cunningham signed his rookie max extension, 5 years, $226 million, and he has earned every penny, and he will get every penny of this contract. And I don't want to hear a fan tell me Cade didn't earn this contract because his third year in the league, he improved his numbers, but he also improved his efficiency with the worst roster in the NBA. Cade Cunningham, rookie max extension, your quote unquote franchise player, the stud, the two-way player JB Bickerstaff believes he can be, is going to be here for a few more seasons. And I'm excited. But what are your thoughts on Cade Cunningham and his rookie max extension?
Well, I think we got him for a steal because I think Orlando just paid Franz Wagner 5 years, $224 million. So I think when we're talking about talent, I think we say we got a good player. We spent the right money on a right player. Granted, we didn't have anybody else to give that money to, really. So I think Cade does deserve it. I think he wants to be here for the long haul. I think he was waiting to sign that contract. Until we figured out where this organization, where the direction was headed. And I think it was a good time once they got a coach. I think that he respects and then has a president of basketball operations that's he's willing to work with.
Dude, there's no doubt that he was never not going to sign that contract. The Pistons could have brought back Killian Hayes, and he's still signing that contract. I mean, that is generational wealth, and I believe if there are certain incentives that are met, which would be all NBA team, that's one of the incentives. It could reach over $265 million with the bonuses that are attached to this contract. I guess my question to you is, what does Cade have? Let's just talk about numbers. What kind of numbers do you want to see him average after signing this extension?
I mean, we want to always see him progress. I don't think we want to see him go backwards by any means. I think last year played 62 games, 23 points, 22.7 points. I want to have him at least at probably 24 and 7. At least, I think that he can live up to that number. I think when it comes to him with that contract, I don't have any issues with him, or I'm nervous of him living up to the hype. I'm just worried about him staying healthy. So I think that's the only thing that I'm worried about. I think when he's on the court, I think he does just fine. There's rare games that we had Cade slump real hard. He usually always kind of found a way to shoot out of any habits that he was into in any type of game that he was playing, because he was really the only one scoring for us at most times. So I think him signing that contract with expectations, I think play how he's playing. I think his numbers will progress just because of the pieces that we surrounded with this year.
I think he has to average somewhere around 25, 8 to 9 assists per game, which I think he will with the assists, with more shooting on this team, and probably still around 5 rebounds. And he definitely has to compete. He's not a bad defender by any stretch of the imagination. He is good defensively. He's not there's no defensive player of the year in his future, probably no all defensive team either. But as a guy that can just stay in front of someone and make things difficult, he can do that. Then that's what he has shown. So I think if those things continue, he'll be fine. I do think he would have played more than 62 games this season if the Pistons had been competing for something other than, 15 wins. Like if they had
5th overall pick.
Yeah, the 5th overall pick, he would have played more than 62 games. My thing is, I don't know how you feel, but if the Pistons don't make the playoffs, or let's just say they make the playoffs one time during this contract, this 5 years, would you blame that more on the Detroit Pistons as the organization and failing to build around Cade, or do you think you would still place the blame on Cade Cunningham for not doing enough to get the team into the playoffs. Because in basketball, an individual can carry a team so much. Like that that in my opinion is the beautiful part about basketball. Like an individual, they can win you games on their own. So that's my question to you. Is it more if they only get to the playoffs one time during this contract, this extension, is that a failure on Cade or a failure on the Detroit Pistons organization?
I think it all points to the players. I think that's what every fan does because that's what they really get to see. They don't get to see the behind the scenes. So every team has the guy on the team that if they don't perform well enough that they point a finger at. And Cade just made more money than I would ever see in 70 lives that I live. So I think you have to point the finger at somebody, and I think it'll have to be him because the organization is now showing that they are willing to build. Like they're willing to do what they can to help him out. So I think maybe not this year, but I'd say give it maybe in 3 years if we're still a sub 22 win team. It has to go to somewhere, and it'll be the guy that they're trying to build around. So I think the fingers would point at Cade.
Okay, that's a fair answer. I I think the fans will blame Cade if they only get to the playoffs one time during this contract, but I would still I don't know. I guess I would blame Cade if the Pistons continue because not that I think they'll make the playoffs this year, but this roster, the way Trajan Langdon has built it, it's been so much better than any team Cade has played on. And I think this will give us a real indication on whether he can be the best player on an NBA team or not the best player on an NBA team. And I guess I got another question for you too. And I was thinking about this a few days ago, and I wish I had wrote it down, but do you see, and this has nothing to do with the contract, this just has something to do with Cade. Do you see Cade as the best player on a championship team, or do you see him as more of the most important player on a championship team? Because I think there is a difference. Because to be the best player, that just means you're the most talented. But
that's a tough question, man.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm bringing up championship, but like it's just I was thinking of the '04 squad, and I was thinking like, okay, Rasheed Wallace was the best player on the team, but Ben Wallace was the most important player on that team, and I was kind of thinking of those two roles, and do either of those really apply to Cade Cunningham?
When it comes to just winning championships nowadays, man, it doesn't always just fall on one guy. Like I understand your question, like to be either the guy that like is kind of just doing dirty work and doing what he can, or the guy that is the leader, like the Nikola Jokic of the team. Like I don't see Cade being the guy. I don't, and that's I think just because we haven't seen leadership from him because he hasn't had an opportunity to be a successor, and he knows it, and we all know it. Like this can be, and this roster is not even. Yeah, it's the best roster that he's ever played on, but that's not good, Lance. It's not. This is still a below average roster, I think. Like we're piecing together options and opportunities for Cade to be successful. But I think for him to win a championship, I don't think he's the front runner of a team. I think he builds with another all-star. Like not going to say it's Jaden Ivey because I don't agree that that's a thing, but you look at how Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are so successful. They're good running mates. And I think if we can find someone to work and pair with Cade as another good two-way player, then maybe you could see and we could have that conversation. But as of right now, I don't see him being a leader quite yet to be able to lead a team to win a championship. Now, I do want to see him. I want to see a little bit more fire out of the midseason tournament, the in-game tournament or whatever they do.
Yeah.
I want to see something out of these guys. Like I want to see them actually compete because man, those games were brutal to watch last year. So I'm curious of how they're going to do when it comes to a type of tournament like this. I want to see some fire out of them. I actually want to see him compete well. But I don't think Cade will ever be the guy to win, to be on a team with a champion, like a championship squad. I don't think he'll be the face of it. I think he would be more of a running mate.
Yeah, I thought about that too, where I'm like, man, he'd be a damn good number two. Yeah. Or even like a really good number three. And I hope he's the franchise guy. I hope he's the most important player on a championship team. But like right now where it's like as the guy, as the number one. The jury's still out, but you do see a clear path of him. Like if he was the number two or the number three, you're like, that's a really good team he's on.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
he's one of the two or three best players on it, like that's a clear role for him as well. But I'm hoping there's more. I think Trajan Langdon hopes there's more as well. And I don't know. I guess I'm just really excited for the regular season to start. Like I want to see how all these guys mesh. Like even though I'm hurt from last season and the historic losing streak and only winning 14 games, I'm just ready to just get home and watch these games and go to a few with you during the season. Like I'm definitely excited for that.
We gotta hope for better. Like that's what we gotta do. And this is Cade's first opportunity to do what he wants to do. Like he really does. And yeah, it's like unless we have another fail of a season where we can't shoot, then we're screwed to beyond belief because that's what we tried to pick up. But I'm the same with you. Like I'm excited to see what these guys can pull off. Like it's a whole new system. It's a whole new environment. Everything is different. And I'm excited to see how well he plays and see how well he wants to play for this team.
The energy just feels different with the Detroit Pistons, from the press conferences to the videos that the Pistons social media team is putting out there. It just feels like there's a whole different vibe with this team and this group of guys. And I'm,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm very excited for the season to start. The Detroit Pistons have claimed Paul Reed off of waivers, so he will continue his career in Detroit. B-ball Paul. And I love the signing. It's not a massive move that's going to grab headlines. It's just one of those moves that gives the Pistons options in the front court, whether it's trading a player away or keeping the same guys at the 4 and the 5 spot. He gives them a little bit of versatility. He gives them an insurance policy. It's he's a solid player for the Detroit Pistons. So there have been rumors that the Detroit Pistons are testing the market for Isaiah Stewart, and there are rumors that the New York Knicks are interested in Jalen Duren. Supposedly they were interested in during draft night, but if you know how all that went down, Jalen Duren got traded to a few teams before he ended up with the Pistons. I believe he was drafted by Charlotte, then traded to the Knicks, then traded to the Pistons. So they did have an opportunity to keep them on their team, but they probably didn't know how good he was going to be. But do you believe that Paul Reed makes either of those players expendable?
No, I think we have our three big men for the year.
Okay.
I think we have our three guys. I think Jalen Duren's going to start. We talked about starting lineups before. I think, yes, Reed coming in is not a complete rim protector. He's 6'9", 210. I mean, he played very well for Philadelphia in the absence of Embiid for most games of last year with him being hurt. So I think that this is a smart pickup, and this is our third big. And I think that we are going to roll with these guys. I don't know if I want to, but I think this is where we're headed. Unless we can find another big as well. If we're going to end up trading Duren or Stewart away for a guard and a pick, or another big and a pick, I'm not really sure how they're going to do that. But I like these three guys because you can rotate them. They all bring different aspects to this team. Like they're not completely similar. So I think we got our three bigs for the season. I still think that Trajan lives up to what he says, that he's going to keep the young guys, and that includes Jalen Duren, and that includes Isaiah Stewart.
I think 8 million's a little much to be paying for a third string 5. Like if he's your third center, like don't get me wrong, that's great depth, but he has proven throughout his career that he belongs on the floor. Not as a starter. I believe he only played 19 minutes per game for this Philadelphia 76ers last year, but he did average a block per game. He can protect the rim. He plays with great energy. He tries to dunk everything. He has a good touch around the rim. Low volume for three-point shooting, but still a good percentage. And like I said earlier, he does bring versatility where you could play him with a Duren or an Isaiah Stewart. I don't know if we still want to see Isaiah Stewart at the 4. Ideally, I would love to see him get minutes at the backup 5, but I do think Paul Reed makes Isaiah Stewart expendable. I don't think he makes Duren expendable because Duren's only 20 years old. There's still a lot left, even though I've been adamant that the Pistons will trade him at some point, I think you at least give him a whole nother year. And I also think that Isaiah Stewart has the second most value behind Cade Cunningham on the trade market. So even though I don't want to see Isaiah Stewart go anywhere, if a team is willing to willing to attach a future asset, like a future first, for to bring in Isaiah Stewart, I think Trajan Langdon has to pull the trigger on that move.
Yeah.
That's what he has to empty his clip, like Troy Weaver would say. Like Trajan Langdon has to make that move because Paul Reed, he very much is Isaiah Stewart. Like they are very similar players. Now, you might get something a little different from Isaiah Stewart, but then you're still going to Paul Reed's going to bring something different to the table. But they are very similar players in that they're both backup fives. So I do think Paul Reed makes Isaiah Stewart expendable, and I think the Pistons are doing their due diligence and seeing what the trade market is for a guy like Isaiah Stewart.
I mean, I think we live in a world that Paul Reed could start halfway through the year.
Maybe, but I doubt it. I'm disagreeing with that one.
I don't
know.
Make
a case for it, though.
Make a case for it. I mean, he already has some type of connection with Tobias Harris, so I think that he already has some I can't say that word. He works well with Tobias. Tobias at the 4 and him at the 5. They played together before. So I think maybe there could be some type of connection. He finishes well at the rim. I think it's a possibility. If Duren didn't get any better on the defensive side of the ball, I think we live in a world where Paul Reed could be our starting center somewhere throughout this season.
So in 28, this is from StatMuse, by the way. In 28 games as a starter in Paul Reed's career, he's averaged 10 points, 7.6 rebounds, 1.6 assists as a starter in the NBA.
In his minutes?
I don't know, probably around like 28. I'm just guessing. I have no idea. They didn't give me minutes. They just gave me the points, the rebounds, and the assists. Pretty much the 3 most important categories for basketball. So, yeah, I don't see Paul Reed starting. The thing I like, though, and we'll talk about JB Bickerstaff's press conference here in a couple of minutes. He did talk about guys earning minutes. Like nothing will be given on this team. So maybe you're right. Maybe Paul Reed just blows his mind where he's like, I gotta play Paul Reed over Jalen Duren. Again, I don't think that's the case, but I do see a world where he's going to try getting, if all 3 of them are on the team during the regular season, when it starts, I do see the world where JB Bickerstaff tries to get them all consistent minutes each night because his offense has worked with 2 bigs. So maybe he can bring that over to the Detroit Pistons and still have it work with some combination of Paul Reed, Isaiah Stewart, and Jalen Duren getting minutes at the 4 and the 5.
I mean, you called this pickup. So, and even when you were talking about this, were you talking about bringing in Paul Reed with these 2 still being on this team? Or were you talking about Paul Reed coming in place of one of them?
I was just more of looking at the way the roster was set up. Like you can't go into the season with just 2 bigs. But I also had that idea in the back of my mind where I'm like, if you do bring in a Paul Reed, you could trade Isaiah Stewart, who has much more value than both of these guys currently, and you could probably get some future assets. That was also part of my thinking, that he could just replace Isaiah Stewart. So, yeah, I guess it was kind of all over the place, but mainly my thought was you need another 5. You need another big. You can't go into the regular season with just 2. You have to have someone else. And Paul Reed, and mainly just came down to who else was available in free agency. He was the best player that was available because he was on waivers. So I figured, why not? You have the cap space. Just bring someone like him in.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, nothing crazy, but
I think he plays well enough with this team if you surround him with shooters. That's why I think that he could be a starting 5 on this team if you surround him with like Malik Beasley, Cade Cunningham, Tim Hardaway Jr., Fontecchio. Like if that's what he provides is crashing the boards and just being a rim protector, that's why I think that he could be a starting spot.
Yeah, but he does struggle against like bigger 5s. Like you definitely see the role with him as an energy guy off the bench. But now if he was so good defensively, where you're looking like, yeah, we got to get this guy minutes because on the defensive end, he really is a piece, a real game changer on that side of the ball. Then yeah, I could see him starting, but I just don't think that's who he is. Like
Okay.
he is undersized, like you were saying. He's just an energy guy. Like I think that's what Paul Reed's role is. But either way, I'm excited for B-ball Paul in Detroit. So JB Bickerstaff was introduced as the Detroit Pistons head coach. The press conference was full of energy. And I, again, am more excited for this team after watching the press conference than I was when he was first announced. You remember how I was when they first announced him that they were going to sign him as the head coach? I was kind of like a Debbie Downer about it a little bit. I wasn't that excited about JB Bickerstaff. But during the press conference, he was preaching big time. He talked about guys earning minutes, nothing will be given. He highlighted getting back to playing Detroit basketball and bringing that physicality back. He talked about Cade being helping him develop into a two-way player, one of the best in the league. He talked about using Jaden Ivey off the ball and in movement. You could tell that he is excited to coach this team, that he actually watched film. He has an idea of who these players are. It wasn't just about the money like it was with Monty Williams. JB Bickerstaff, that press conference, he sold me. And I've been hurt by coaches before, but JB Bickerstaff sold me. And I'm going to do whatever I can to get to games this season.
I liked his interview, and I think he has a lot of respect from Trajan. I think that was a huge part of bringing him in, and I do like the honesty, talking about what he wants to do with this team, how players need to earn their roles and whatnot. And JB being a part of the Cavs organization for the last 4 or 5 years, he knows what Detroit has. He played them enough to understand who Cade Cunningham is. He had to scout him. He had to scout Ivey, Jalen Duren. He being in that division, they met a lot. And so I think that we all know what I said about this hire and how I didn't want JB Bickerstaff. Do I still want him? Not essentially. I think there was other candidates out for the job, but I am trusting the process that's being put in place by Trajan Langdon and how he wants to associate all these players with all these new coaches that are coming in and JB Bickerstaff himself. I think he does care. I think he does like this roster. And we got a lot to watch coming forward. Like, I want to see how he's going to do this. Him mentioning Jaden Ivey and or Cade Cunningham being on the floor at all times. That's very important. And I think that is something that needs to be done.
So, yeah, let's talk about that. So he said that he wants to stagger their minutes. He wants to have one of those guys on the floor at all times, just like Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell were. Now, he did say those guys started, they closed games together. With the podcast we just did about Summer League, do you see Jaden Ivey starting alongside Cade Cunningham with, like knowing that there is no real backup point guard on this team? Do you see Jaden Ivey starting alongside Cade Cunningham? Just like I don't know if you picked up, like, did JB Bickerstaff insinuate that to you? Like, was he kind of hinting that Jaden Ivey would be the starter? Because I didn't really read it as Jaden Ivey's going to be the starter. It's just that whatever role I have, he's going to be playing big minutes for this Pistons team.
Yeah, even if he is starting, he can still lead the second unit. We have enough guards to come in after 4 or 5 minutes to come and give him a break. Cade's going to play the bulk of the minutes.
Yeah.
And as long as he's healthy, he is going to play 30, 32, 30, 31 minutes a night. Like, that's what we want. He's the guy that we just paid. Like, he's going to do that for us as long as his body allows him to do that. So I can see Jaden Ivey in that rotation, and then having Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley come and subbing him out, and then now providing you with a shooter at the 2 position while Ivey gets a 2-3 minute rest and then comes in and takes out Cade while Cade gets a rest for the rest of a quarter. Like, I can see that being a thing. I don't know how you want to start this lineup. It's going to be really weird. Like, the first game, I think, is going to say a lot about how JB and Trajan Langdon want to go about using this roster and these minutes. But I don't want Jaden to start. I think Jaden would be great coming off the bench. Like, I really do think that is his sweet spot. Like, I think that's where he's going to be the best. I think, and we even talked about it the last podcast, man. This second unit is one of the fastest second units in the NBA, man. We have so much speed to come off the bench with Ron Holland, Asar Thompson, Jaden Ivey. We have so many guys that have so much explosive potential. So I like Ivey off the bench, and I do like him talking about staggering, but we're gonna see a coach that actually knows how to use players. So I think it's gonna be a little different for us to get used to begin with.
Yeah, no, that's what he was talking about with Jaden Ivey. Like he didn't say exactly how that he wants to get him back to the Purdue days. But if you watch Jaden Ivey at Purdue, they were always trying to get him to, come off the screen, getting him going downhill, then give him the ball one step at the rim. Something we didn't see with Monty. Just like either stuck him in the corner, tried to play him in pick and roll, all this other stuff. When I was like screaming at my television screen when I'm watching the games, like, dude, put him, slingshot him to the rim. Have Cade create something where Jaden Ivey is coming off a screen where, he's cutting to the basket where they can find him. I want to see more of that. And that's honestly what we're going to get with JB Bickerstaff, according to the press conference. I love it. And I love that he talked about spacing, and I love that he highlighted Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart having the ability to put pressure on the rim as bigs. And again, it's just not something we saw. We keep trying to make Isaiah Stewart into this 4 or 5 that's going to create space for everybody else. But it's like, that dude, he can operate a little bit around the rim. Like, he doesn't have the softest touch, but, he was a classic throwback center when he was drafted. Like, let him use his physicality and strength on the block. Maybe not a ton of times during the game, but, feed the big fellow when he's near the rim. So I wanted to talk about JB Bickerstaff, talking about Cade Cunningham, but being a stud and potentially being a good two-way player in the league. Do you see that? Do you think JB Bickerstaff can help Cade develop on that side of the ball more than what we've seen?
Oh, definitely. You get a coach that cares about his success rate. Like you get a guy that actually wants to transform this guy into a player that he still has not, I don't think he's even come close to reaching his ceiling. It's been blocked by a bunch of people just standing in the way of not allowing him to reach full potential. So I think JB is going to, I think we've seen a lot of Cade, but we haven't seen Cade in the right spots, like in the right light. We have not seen him shine where he needs to, and we're forming pieces. They're not great pieces. They're Reese's Pieces. We're not sponsored by that's great candy, by the way. But it's like we're putting him in a position to be successful, and now we can finally watch this guy coordinate how he like. If JB wants to run an ISO offense, run the ISO offense. Our best players are one. If you want to do that, that's fine, and we'll work with it. So I'm not afraid of Cade downfalling at all. I think he's still going to give us at least the numbers that we've already gotten. But I think JB has a lot of high praise for Cade in grooming him into something better than he is now.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of meat left on the bones for Cade Cunningham. Not talking about the franchise stuff we talked at the beginning of the podcast, but as a complete basketball player, I think there's a lot more to his game than what we've been shown. I feel like he's been asked to do so much offensively. It's, tired him out on the other side of the ball. I want to see a two-way player. Like, especially when you draft a guy with the first overall pick, you're kind of hoping he's the complete package.
Yeah.
And Cade, so far, he's delivered on the offensive end, and he's gotten better every single year. But defensively, that's where I'd also love to see him take a leap as a leader, because if he's out there playing defense, that's going to wake everybody else up. Where they're like, dude, this is our guy. This is the guy. He was the first overall pick. He's the big money guy, and he's out here playing defense. He's given effort on that side. It will just move everybody else. I can't say it enough. I'm excited about this season. I hope I'm not disappointed.
Well, we can't lose that many games in a row, can we?
I don't think it's going to happen again. I really don't. I think we got a coach that cares, and he really wants to build something special in Detroit. And it's funny too, because there is pressure on JB Bickerstaff to prove that he can be the coach that gets a team over the hump and has these deep playoff runs.
Yeah.
There's pressure on him as well. Like I just love this underdog mentality they're going in with this into this season. Like I just love that feeling that I'm getting from this team.
And it's nice to see the communication between both JB and Trajan.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like it's very important to see that, and I think we're gonna grow with this team starting from them. So we'll see how everything takes place. I don't know if we're completely done with free agency or picking anybody up. I think we still have a little bit of time left for that to make some more moves, but we're in the right direction. And it sucks because we're not, the train's on the tracks. It ain't got much on it, but we're heading somewhere. So we'll see how well it goes. All hope that Cade improves, and all hope that, at least for me for this season, is the roster management is done the right way. And the guys are getting the correct amount of minutes. We're using the guys to be successful and not just plugging in places because we have no idea what the hell is going on. So I think it's going to be better than last year, but that's really not saying much.
I mean, it's not, but also I don't know, it kind of is, like, but I'm with you. I just want to see JB Bickerstaff. The thing I'm looking forward to most this season, and I know we're still a couple months away, is JB Bickerstaff putting the guys in positions to succeed, to play to their strengths.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see from this team going forward.
Well, I think we lacked a lot of trust. Like, I think as much as I compared this before, because I know all the people that watch this that, yes, we're Pistons fan, but we're also Lions fans too. Like, the whole relationship between Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, like, that's a bond, man.
Dude, it's so
They
important.
they are so locked into each other, and they have all the trust in the world, and that's what turned that franchise around. Like, that's what made them successful. So hopefully we are at step one of moving this organization in the right direction.
I think we are. I really think we are. And that's where we're going to end it. Thank you guys for listening to the 3 Championship Drive podcast. Do us a favor, go to Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts and hit the follow button. After you hit the follow button, rate with 5 stars and tell us what you expect from the Detroit Pistons this upcoming season. But more importantly, tell a Pistons fan. So close that
So
time.
close.